Hello, everyone. This is the Static Site Editor Product and Design Weekly call for August 24th, 2020. We can jump right into it. I really only have one topic that I wanted to bring up, and that's to share some work I've been doing on some formal jobs to be done. And I have them in a Google Doc linked. I will save for this call for the purposes of time. Reading through every single one, there's quite a few. They are definitely a work in progress. Michael, I saw your feedback and it's great feedback. I haven't made changes, but I will. I intend to tighten them up based on your suggestions. I think they're right on. And really, the format I was going with here is something that, as I've been thinking about it more closely, aligns us with a direction where we are called the static site editor, but really we have three sort of, or maybe four supersets of user journeys and jobs to be done categories. So the editor itself for editing existing content is where we've been focused mostly right now. And we knew that there's going to be workflows and jobs to be done around creating new content. There's also a lot of known work in our backlog around the publishing flow, but I think this is the first time we've formally committed to jobs to be done around site configuration and creating new Jamstack sites or static sites from scratch, and what that might mean for the user's journey through configuring from the project template or from scratch, and enabling the editor, configuring it to behave the way they want it to, making it tightly integrated with their other products or their projects of choice, whether it's a static site generator or maybe they want to host on a CDN, things like that. Those jobs to be done are something that we haven't, as a team, explored as extensively, but I think we'll need to really think about. So I don't want to read through each one of them. The link's in the doc. It's open for feedback. And I'll just, I guess, turn it over if anybody has any thoughts on what I just said as a summary, or if you've read them in more detail, if you want to talk about a specific one.
I guess with the jobs to be done one, would we back some of this? So normally jobs to be done is like derived from user interviews and stuff like that. And I know we've done a few, and partly from there, I think you're pulling the jobs to be done, but maybe this one's more for Kat. Do we need to back up our jobs to be done with more formal research to validate this? Like, like the jobs to be done framework has like this whole like interview process of like important satisfaction and the whole like timeline thing. So like, would we need to go through some kind of more qualitative research to back up some of these jobs to be done? Or would this be part of that other epic that we have where we're trying to look at the scope of the static site editor beyond the handbook? Like, would that, like, should we focus that issue around kind of do more validation?
Yeah, so this was where my brain was going. It's a little tricky. I would say the things that have resulted from internal research studies you've already done, so maybe you kind of verified certain workflows and needs that came out of those interviews, then that's kind of like the research process feeding into your jobs to be done. But for things where it's like it doesn't exist as a focus for the static site editor yet, you would want to validate them with the target user. So I think it almost all ties together. You know how there's an open issue for defining a persona, and then there's also editing opportunities beyond the handbook, and then now there's this validating concept. I almost think it could be one set of user interviews where you're exploring the workflows and needs and motivations that user group has. So that helps you define the persona, but also will probably result in a list of jobs to be done. But we could also bring in some established jobs to be done that we want them to like validate themselves and like talk through, does this kind of reflect in your workflow and that sort of thing. So it can be a combination of efforts. So that's what I'm thinking after seeing these different things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And these are definitely more informed by internal interviews that we have done, competitive analysis, and where we know we want to move, and sort of what jobs are being done by our competitors, what problems are being solved there, and then also very few actual interviews and more anecdotal user assumptions, we'll say. So yeah, definitely validating these with external users and refining those personas that we want to interview would be a great next step.
Cool. All right, that sounds good.
So you've got a few topics, Michael, so I'll just turn it over to you.
Yeah, so on my side, I have 3 points at the moment. So the first one is editing in front matter. I think I'm in a pretty good state with that. I'm going to put together a prototype and the script. So expect something to review by tomorrow. So since Commit is the conference is happening tomorrow, a few people that were in our persona group that we're trying to target in product marketing and sales would be kind of focused on that. So I'm going to schedule the meetings more on Thursday and early next week to get some validation through that. So that's good. The category maturity scorecard, Slack recruitment's good. We got some people raising up their hands. We probably have enough for 2 use groups, 2 persona groups again. And yeah, my one question there for you around that, Eric, was like, our one job to be done is like when I want to edit, contribute or edit to a static site, a page on the static site. I want to make it easily and quickly and like within context. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure that if that's the only job to be done that we're focused on right now, the session is like really quick. It's like, so I don't know if we should sneak in more stuff in it to make that session like that feels like one question on the top of another thing, or do we try to stretch it out to like the 20 minutes or something and try to sneak in some other stuff? So one approach was like, do we add more jobs to be done to the thing, or should we try to validate some other parts that haven't been validated? Which kind of like led me on to number 3. It's like, you know, we still have to do the follow-up solution validation on the workflow and associating changes to a previous MR. So yeah, that's on my kind of like radar again. I kind of let it slip for the last week, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think we should be more or less holding ourselves accountable and grading ourselves on that one job to be done. But I think since we have the volunteers, we can pick a couple that we feel like maybe we solved or partially solved and see how they feel about them. And then if we can't come up with those, I think mixing it with some solution validation sounds great. I mean, they're not exactly all going to be like, this might not be the best group for the editing of front matter, but it might just want to show them like, how would you edit a title on this, and see what they say.
Okay.
Also, hopefully it goes without saying, but as you're scheduling these, let me know, or just feel free to offer my calendar up for this half of the world. People find that time more convenient.
Yeah. I'll probably do the same as previously, where I'll put it towards like your end of the day. Like,
Yeah, so I'm just, all of these jobs to be done are drafts and they're not all written equally tight, but I would say we could potentially, if there's a job to be done around not just making the edit, but using familiar patterns and content tools, content editing tools. So we could probably validate that at the same time. There might be some further questions for validating the actual job to be done that we could ask about just what are their motivations around not wanting or not writing in Markdown and not wanting to use the web IDE, and see if we can sort of flesh out that job to be done at the same time.
okay. And Catherine, it looks like you added a fourth point. Did you want to verbalize that one?
Sure. Yeah, so following up on the point we just talked about, it'd be good if we could decide on either the user groups we should target for this first kind of iteration of persona research, or the jobs to be done / tasks that they're responsible for. So basically I'll give you an example. So like when we had a goal to create a product manager persona, we were doing our recruiting based off of certain tasks, or like we want to target product managers at mid-sized organizations or some sort of thing who are responsible for these tasks, so that we can create a screener survey that they take, and you kind of identify who fits into that group and who doesn't fit into that group. It was a little bit more clear at that time, since we already had product management offerings like issues, milestones, and whatnot. So we knew we wanted people who were responsible for things like like backlog grooming or things like that, so that they could give us their perspective. But that's a similar thing I want to do here, so that we can start thinking of how to recruit, and then the interview questions we might ask. But it's a little tricky because it seems like maybe the task and jobs to be done might be what to focus on the most, because different job titles could do those tasks. But if you have thoughts on, no, I think we should go with this, people with job titles related to this role or something, then that's another way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've given this some more thought since we talked about this last time, and thinking about personas, and I need to contribute this back up to the issue. But I think we do have that challenge that we talked about last time, which is we kind of want this to be something anybody can and wants to use, regardless of job title. So it's hard to nail down a specific persona. And so for that point, I like what you said just then about going for the task-based recruiting. Because really we just want anybody to be able to edit the content of the page. And we want anybody to feel comfortable making that edit and confident that the edit's going to be represented correctly. And that's fine, but we do still need to talk about personas. If I was to pick user groups outside of the confines of like GitLab job titles, I would look for people, first of all, in something like a UX writer, or something like that, or even a tech writer, really anything that has a writer, content marketer. Roles like that are probably the ones I would focus on. So those are people who would potentially be frequently collaborating on content where they are not writing the front end code to populate the web page, but they need to they need to have input on the content or write it from scratch and then put it in there and know it's going to look, correct. Either through some kind of workflow of previewing or reviewing, or like a staging environment, whatever they're using now, we would want to validate that that's kind of a user group. I do think the stakeholders, product managers, however you want to blanket, like around like, small to mid-sized companies that have leadership that's very intimately involved still in day-to-day work. You know, they might be contributing content on a page or running a handbook or something like that. I think that's another user group we would focus on. And then sort of a tertiary group, but and that we're not solving for right now, but that will be very interested is front-end engineers. And we already have a persona there, but specifically front-end engineers who are configuring and setting up sites to be collaborative across these user personas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so just hearing some of this, I feel like the focus should be on tasks because that's more general. But I think maybe a refinement of the personas is maybe introducing one internal persona, like the content editor, because whenever I'm trying to in an issue template, they're like, who is this for? Here's some personas, and I'm like going through the list. Nope, 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 nope. And like, yes, engineering managers and like their representatives, senior stakeholders, but we don't have one just internal one for someone who like updates content or works with product marketing or like updates stuff. So maybe as a small iteration, it's like we introduce one person to represent these people who are not developers, or designers or product managers, but they're actually still within an organization, but they contribute in a different way through documentation, through the handbook. Because once you get into tech writers, they kind of live in the world of docs, and blogs kind of live in the marketing world. So it's kind of like this like middleman of where we don't have a person yet. So maybe we can just reduce the scope from like all these people to like someone, and that might just come out of the research that we do through tasks, and then we can just create a proto persona around, okay, this is a content editor, these are their goals and pain points, and then we'll commit that to the internal list. So I think task is the one to focus on, just based on that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I like that idea of first creating this internal content editor persona. We might, I think what I'll do is I'll review some of the research you've already done so far to see what I can pull from it, and then we might do additional research if there's like still some ambiguities there, and then the first iteration of an external one will probably still be content editor focused, but it might have more variety because the job titles and responsibilities probably would vary a lot more externally. So that sounds like a good idea. Awesome, thank you.
Cool.
All right, well, that's it for the agenda. I look forward to continuing to refine both of these as we get more research. This is going to be really helpful as we define the next 6 to 12 months of our feature and where we want to head. So very excited.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks again, and I will stop the recording.